Girl, we're so bored in quarantine that yesterday Daisy took us out to the yard and asked us to throw sticks at her, and we did.
Wow. Where's my not a mother shirt?
Do you know what we haven't done in a couple weeks because we just keep forgetting?
Oh, yeah, I know this time. Should I, for the sake of the bit, should I be like, what?
Jillian Pensavalle.
Patrick Hines. You're so far away.
You guys, before we get to the show, just a quick reminder. Look, we're into the Tiger King. You asked, we did it. You wanted the Tiger King, go to the Patreon and find it. On the Patreon, you guys, it's where we do our episode-by-episode series that you want us to cover. So, like, throw out a couple, GP.
The Staircase, The Jinx, Making a Murderer, Lorena.
The Menendez Murders, Laci Peterson, Don't F with Cats, OJ Made in America.
Aaron Hernandez.
Did we say Making a Murderer? 20 episodes of Making a Murderer?
I said, I think we doubled up one, but 19, 20, who's counting at this point?
You can also get ad-free versions of these episodes. You can join our after party. We have a tier where we send you stuff in the mail, or right now under quarantine, we're sending stuff digitally. We just did a whole puzzle pack.
Look.
Steve put together a puzzle pack, and he was so proud of it.
You know, we're pretty on brand, but Steve with a puzzle pack, could you get more on brand than Steve Tipton creating Mad Libs and crossword puzzles? It's amazing.
Girl, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about CBS's The Case of JonBenet Ramsey.
Part 1. So you guys, this is another two-parter. Both are available right now. Part 1 is available right now. You're listening to it. Part 2 is available ad-free at the $5 level on Patreon. So you don't have to wait to hear our thoughts on Part 2, where a man volunteers to be tased twice. We'll get there.
Do you know I called Mike into the room?
I know. I was screaming.
He was working out or doing something, and I was like waving my arms.
I know.
Like, you have to see what just happened. He stayed for the rest of the ep. How about that?
You guys, episode 2 is as bonkers as episode 1. Anyway, JonBenet girl, look, we've never gotten into this case. I want to say one thing. So JonBenet Ramsey was 6 years old when she died.
Yeah.
And my daughter is currently 6 years old. And I just wanted to point out, like, Daisy is like a person. I always thought of JonBenet Ramsey as like a baby, you know, like a mushy sort of baby. 6 years old is like a real person, like with thoughts and ideas. And like that kind of took me by surprise because Daisy is the exact age she was when she died.
That's so interesting that you say. I think of her as anything but a baby. She's a little girl, but even before TCO, I didn't dive into this case really. I know people have been obsessed with it, but I knew the image of her as this pageant queen, and to me, she felt so much older in a sense, where I'm like, there's that little girl who's like not so babyish. She has like a full beat. Like, look at those lashes. So it's just interesting. Like, there's a lot to dive into. People's memories are interesting here, the way they're quoting JonBenet. I'm like, she was, mature for her age, but she wasn't 40 with the stuff she said. I've heard Daisy talk. Daisy doesn't talk the way JonBenet, quote, talked in these people's memory.
Right.
911 emergency. We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's trunk.
Let me address very directly. I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
God knows who you are, and we will find you.
The list of suspects narrows.
There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? What? Does it say the gender? I don't know. Hurry. Patsy.
So you tried to solve a homicide, but a homicide doesn't exist.
I did not kill JonBenet. I love that child.
We do not have sufficient evidence.
This little girl's homicide to this date has been unresolved. In my opinion, I think we can change that right now.
We have 5 different motives in this one crime.
It makes no sense.
The most important thing is to go where the evidence takes us.
Do not ever contact me again.
Unbelievable. We want to get the truth out so that JonBenet could rest in peace.
it opens with a Christmas video from like the Ramsey family. It's like we see Patsy Ramsey like inviting the world into her home as their like virtual Christmas card or whatever. And JonBenet is 4 in this video. And JonBenet Ramsey looks like a 4-year-old.
Hello, I'm Patsy Ramsey. Daddy's not here, but this is JonBenet. She's 4, Burke is 7. And we'd like to welcome you to our home and wish you a very Merry Christmas. Wave, JonBenet.
She looks so much unlike the pageant shots that we know that she's almost unrecognizable.
And the thing that's so shitty about those pageant shots that the media, as soon as this happened, latched onto is that wasn't who she was. She was too young to have that be an identity for her. And I think it's such a disservice to the memory of her and the justice of her that all those glamour shots of her were kind of, when you think of her like that, when you should think of her as a 6-year-old, even though that's sadder and will keep you up longer. Right. I'm not doing this alone. You stay right up there with me. You stay up at night with me, God damn it. If I'm not sleeping, nobody is.
Hey, listen, if they've made one social contract by listening to this podcast, they are on your mood cycle. That's all there is to it.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to also say her name is actually JonBenet. And I looked it up. It's a portmanteau of her dad's first name and last name. So it's JonBenet.
Yeah, that's in my notes somewhere too. I think it's
a weird way to get a name, but it's also like, it's not JonBenet. It's not like a known French name like it sounds. It's actually JonBenet, which is just weird. And it's not her fault. JonBenet, like I'm not making fun of your name. I'm just saying it's a weird name.
Yeah, I think, again, if you're listening to episode whatever, zillion one this is, JonBenet didn't do anything wrong.
Right?
We're Team JonBenet. We don't victim blame or shame here. You guys, are you new? If you're new, welcome. Please hang out. We're a BYO pod, so sit, get cozy, but you'll probably not sleep later. And I feel okay about that because, again, if I'm not sleeping, nobody is.
Right. So anyway, I was just going to say that like it's one of those things where like JonBenet Ramsey was only in pageants because her mom was in pageants. And I'm like, oh, that's a weird thing to put on your kids. But then I was like, oh, wait, we're like 2 gay dads that make Daisy take ballet. So like, who are we to talk?
Yeah, just kind of like, oh, that totally makes sense. Because if you have a 6-year-old who loves getting dressed up with the makeup and the hair and the dresses, that's great. Do you?
Totally.
But there's no kid who's like, you know what I want to work painstakingly at? Pageants. That's the mother. That's the mom. No question is that the mom. So we start to meet our hosts, our guides for this. Jim Clemente.
I'm Jim Clemente. I'm a retired FBI profiler. I'm an expert in the areas of child sex crimes, child abductions, and child homicides.
You probably know him if you're listening to this podcast. You might listen to Real Crime Profile, which he's on.
Yeah.
And basically he's like, I'm an expert in all the bad things that happen to kids.
Right.
Anything horrible. He's an expert and he's trying to take these bad guys down. And then Laura Richards, remember her from the Dirty John series we did?
Oh, I was trying to remember which one she was on, but she does Real Crime Profile with him. Am I wrong?
Well, I was just going in order of my notes, but...
My name's Laura Richards. I'm a criminal behavioural analyst, and I've been trained by New Scotland Yard and the FBI.
She's just like a badass bitch. We just love her.
Yeah, she's a criminal behavioral analyst. And they're like, look, we're going to get to the bottom of this because, God damn it, this is the most talked about case on Reddit and the internet, and they just want to really solve it.
So we start to get the backstory in the Ramsey family, and we learn that John Ramsey was on his second marriage when he married Patsy. He had 3 kids from his first marriage, and one of them, his daughter Beth, was killed in a car accident.
Yeah, and we don't learn anything about his previous marriage or the kids from that marriage other than what happened to Beth.
Yeah.
But we do learn that Patsy was 14 years younger than him.
Patsy was actually 14 years younger than him. So when they met, they started courting each other. She was 21, 22.
She had been Miss West Virginia, and so for him, she was quite a trophy wife.
She also graduated with a degree in journalism. So she was pretty smart herself at the University of West Virginia.
Laura is just like, yeah, she had like a journalism degree. She was Miss West Virginia. She was basically a trophy wife. Like, he was lucky to have her. She was smart, beautiful. Here we go.
Yeah. And we see her win Miss West Virginia, and it's like the most pageanty moment. But it's like, we need to see that moment to understand why pageanting is such a big part of like the Ramsey family.
Right. Also, they were super rich.
John had a rising career in the computer industry. Access Graphic had $1 billion turnover that very year that JonBenet was killed. So don't forget the lifestyle. They had 2 planes at one point and I think a 30-foot yacht.
They had 2 planes and a 30-foot yacht, girl. We're in the wrong line of work.
I was like, what? 2 planes and a yacht? And then we just dive right over that. I know we have more important things to get to. I know that.
Like at one point, John tries to call for his plane. It's like, girl.
Like, which one? What plane should we take today?
Right,
What?
exactly. So Jim Clemente tells us that like JonBenet would be almost 26 years old at the time of the filming of this documentary, which that hit me like a piano, as my friend Jillian says.
Ooh. Speaking of smart and beautiful, your friend Jillian sounds like both of those things.
She's a 10, let me tell you.
Oh, even in quarantine? Come on.
But then her brother Burke was 3 years older than her. He is now a grown man. He's 29 years old now, Burke.
Yeah, we'll get back to Burke a lot in this. Now they do this thing, because they're starting over from scratch. They have this war room that Laura calls the think room because she's very proper. And so they assemble this team, like the dream team. And Matt, my love, if we can get some cool, like, superhero music, 'cause it's like, bow, 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 bow. And it's like, first we have Dr. Henry Lee, forensic scientist.
You guys know Henry Lee. So I wrote down their cases. Henry Lee worked with us on OJ. He worked with us on The Staircase. Laci Peterson. She's been around.
Then we have Jim Fitzgerald, forensic linguist.
He worked on the Unabomber, you guys. Okay, I see you, Jim Fitzgerald.
They call him Fitzy. I'm obsessed. James Kohler, investigator.
So he works for the Boulder DA. He's been with this case the whole time. James Kohler isn't super comfortable on camera.
No, not at all. I'm like, girl, shoulders down. It's okay. It's all right.
But he's the one who's like, you need someone to practice tasing? Let me get one of my guys.
And he does. It's crazy. Then, wait, gotta get back to the voice. Stan Burke, statement analysis, FBI.
Which is like, he has the least cool title and kind of the most to say of any of them. Whatever, Stan.
And then, Dr. Werner Spitz, forensic pathologist.
You guys, you know Werner Spitz. He is like famous for the JFK assassination, not for doing it, but for trying to figure it out. He worked with us on OJ as well. He worked with us on Caylee Anthony and West Memphis 3. Am I wrong?
West Memphis 3, and also there's something wrong with Aunt Diane. How are you forgetting? What? An abscess? What? Huh?
Dr. Werner Spitz, who again, like when we see the roundtable of these like meetings, he doesn't say much at first. And I'm like, is he going to talk at all? Then he talks a lot.
Hold tight, girl. And so, like Laura says,
20 years on, putting together this elite and renowned team, and actually bringing these minds into one room, this has never been done before. And when you join up everybody's experience accumulatively, it's over 250 years of experience working in law enforcement.
You know, we have over 250 years working in law enforcement. I'm like, why do people do this? Stop it. You don't have 250. Why do you do this? Right. People do it all the time. Over 250 years. No, you don't.
Laura, you're impressive enough. Like, you don't need to do that, girl.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of like, yeah, because they're all very, like, technical, obviously. And we say this a lot. Like, there are a lot of cases that we cover where when we're talking to experts like this, they say stuff very bluntly because that's how their brain works. And we're like, ooh, a little warped, girl. So get ready for that because everyone here really is trying to get to the bottom of it in the best way possible. And they can't hold back. Like, they have to be like, you guys, it's just us here. I wouldn't say this to anybody, but, and then insert, like, very blunt thing about something horrible that happened. But if they are coming from a good place, as are we.
So they decide we're going to reinvestigate top to bottom. So let's start with that 911 call. So you guys, it's December 26th, 1996, 5:52 a.m. Patsy Ramsey is hysterical.
I'm laughing at the term hysterical.
911 emergency. We need him. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old.
So what she goes through is like, they just woke up, JonBenet is not there, Patsy's a mess. And we'll get back to this, but my question is, and you know this because you woke up to not knowing where your daughter is.
Yeah, that happened to me once.
You check everywhere, as ridiculous as it may be. I'm looking in the DVD holder. I'm looking under the printer. You're looking every which way you can. You didn't look in the basement? We'll get back to that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So our experts are like, hey guys, I don't know if you know this, but we actually have more audio from just the original call because apparently Patsy Ramsey thought she hung up, but really didn't. And the dispatcher stayed on the phone.
You guys, I was gay screaming at the top of my lungs.
So Jim, the linguist, it's your time to shine, girl. Let's dive in. Because before we dive into this like mystery audio, Jim's like, hold on a second, turning this car around. I really don't like how she says I'm the mother.
Yes,
don't
that's
like
right.
That. And then the entire round table is like, now that you're saying it, I kind of hate it too. I'm the mother.
The fifth word used is the plural pronoun we.
We have a kidnapping.
We have a kidnapping. What does that even mean? Where's the ownership?
She's blonde. 6 years old.
She doesn't mention her daughter's name. She says, my daughter, my 6-year-old
I'm the
blonde.
mother.
I'm the mother.
Are you Caylee Ramsey? I'm the mother.
These are behavioral things that I think are extremely unusual.
Let me just sort of get into a little bit of like how bullshit this is, because then he also points out that she uses the pronoun we, like we have a kidnapping here. And I'm like, well, girl, maybe that is something. Maybe it's not. We're never gonna know.
Yeah, this is a very slippery slope when you're like talking about people's behavior.
Yes.
So on one end, it's like you could totally tell. Like I'm just such a hypocrite here, and I'm calling myself out because in some cases I'm like Ted Bundy. I'm like, look at that behavior. I hate him. But in other cases, and again, we don't like the Ramsey parents, but I don't know if you can really dive into any of this in any realistic kind of way that's going to give us any kind of answers. Can we look at some scientific evidence? Because that would be great.
That's exactly what I'm saying, girl. So the Ramsey 911 phone call ends abruptly. Like in every movie or show you ever watch, you always hear the dispatcher being like, ma'am, stay with me. They're on their way. They're on their way. They're on their way. Like Patsy does not have any time for that shit. Patsy like says what she needs to say. She's like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And she hangs up the phone and they think that's really suspicious. It's also weird because we find out that she hangs up on 911 to call her family friends and invite them over.
Oh, yeah. We did this at the casting, JonBenet. She invites the whole neighborhood over.
Right.
It's like she had the finger sandwiches just ready and waiting for him. Come on in. It's a crime scene. What are you talking about?
So now, girl, we got to dive into this extra audio. There should be a whole documentary just about this shit.
Yeah. Okay. So they have this garbled audio.
Oh my God.
Patsy?
It's hard to make it out.
And look, I'm talking to a fellow editor here.
Yes.
Here's the thing about audio, you guys. When audio sucks, it's incredibly hard to make it not suck. The damage is done. So you have to just make something record excellently in the first go. You can't really fix shitty audio. That being said, if you do, if there is something outside or if there is, the minute you touch the audio to try to make it sound any quote better, it starts to sound like the person or the audio is completely underwater. And you get this garbled underwater sound. So now they have this garbled audio that's already kind of, because she, put the phone down, right? She put the phone down.
Good mic technique, girl.
Thanks. I try, acting. This is far and I'm close.
So Jim and Laura go to like a fancy like recording studio to work with an engineer to try to like figure out the mystery of this garbled audio.
And the thing is, you and I know from the beginning, the hours and days we've wasted in our earlier podcasting days of trying to get something from nothing. Like we know going into it, we're not going to get anything out of this. And I know it's like for the sake of the show, but they go through this with this expert and they say what they claim they're hearing on this audio. To them, they hear very, very specific, clear statements.
You can also see the moment where like it's not working. And then, Jim Clemente all of a sudden hears a man's voice saying, we're not speaking to you.
So this is the noise reduced.
Patsy?
Oh, wow. I think I hear a man say, we're not speaking to you. I think that's John Ramsey's voice.
The other thing, too, the other trick is as soon as somebody says, I think this is what I'm hearing, you can't not hear it. And you can't hear anything else.
Of course. Your ear, this is going to sound crazy, but you're going to understand what I mean. Your ear looks for it.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the man's voice they're assuming is JonBenet's dad. Then they hear a woman's voice, and they're going around and around and around. And one of them is like,
I'm getting, oh, something Jesus. And then it repeated.
I hear either Holy Jesus or Help Me Jesus.
What I heard is, what did you do? What did you do? That's what it sounds like through the speakers. I didn't listen with headphones.
Oh, Jesus. And the other one's like, maybe it's Help Me, Jesus. And then Clemente again, he's like, no, girl. They're saying, what did you do? Girl, that's a little on the nose, no?
Well, here's the thing. I side googed.
Oh.
I did it. I have to admit, I googed.
Oh, girl, tell me everything.
This is a thing that these like made for TV documentaries, they all do it.
Yes.
Everyone does it. It's like a thing that everybody does. But these quotes, if they sound on the nose, it's because they were released like back in 1999.
Oh, really? Oh, so you're saying this isn't the first time somebody's done this with the audio?
No. And sure, the technology in 2016 when this came out is totally different from 1999.
Yeah.
But this was like outlined in a book, and the only quotes they happen to quote here are what's outlined in the book. Every made-for-TV, like cable or network stuff does this. But it also kind of makes me feel like, don't make me feel like you're just coming up with this. Because again, as audio people, we're like, you didn't hear it, and I don't hear it.
Right. So moving on, we never really come back to that audio. It's interesting. And it's like, fucking Patsy. It, like, once again, everyone is so bad at this. Everyone who's like does wrong, illegal things is bad at it. Patsy, if you're involved in some way and you're faking a 911 call, hang the phone up, girl.
When my parents hang up a phone, it could be they're calling you to say happy birthday, girl. My dad will do the annoying, he'll beep, 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 beep. He'll beep the phone 3 times to make sure he actually hung up.
I think that has more to do with other things in your Italian family heritage.
What mob? But I'm just saying, if something nefarious is happening, you make sure the phone's hung up, no?
1 zillion fucking %. So the next thing that they've decided they're going to do, now we've heard this 911 call, they're going to track down the 911 operator. Now, her name is Kim Archuleta. She's the one that had the presence of mind to not disconnect the call when Patsy didn't hang up. And I thought it was a little bit curious that they were going to track her down. What is she actually really going to add to this? She kind of adds some stuff to this.
Yeah, and the thing about Kim is that she's here to tell us that she's been dying to talk about the case for all these years, but she was never formally questioned about it ever. And she was actually told some kind of shady things.
I wanted someone to come talk to me. I wanted someone to get my testimony. When they did the grand jury, nobody talked to me.
Really? You didn't testify in the grand jury?
No. I had an investigator come to my house, told me, there's a gag order. Do not talk about this until we go to court. And I never was talked to again. And it never went to court.
The thing about that is that she's like the 911 operator. What could she possibly know? The only difference is that the extenuating circumstance here, the fact that she stayed on the phone after Patsy thought she hung up. So she actually is breaking some news, girl. Can we get a breaking news?
Breaking news.
What bothered me immensely, it sounded like she said, okay, we've called the police, now what? And that disturbed me. So I remained on the phone trying to hear what was being said. It sounded like there were 2 voices in the room, maybe 3.
Okay, we called the police, now what? The actual sentence.
Yeah, which is weird because we just sat in the studio, the let's fix the audio studio for 20 minutes, and nobody heard anything like that.
I know. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just we get it. It's a shady situation. Patsy was not careful when she hung up the phone, but we're never going to know.
Yeah, and the thing is, the reason why we're still talking about this 911 call is because this 911 call and this garbled audio, Jim and Laura and our team of experts are convinced that Burke, JonBenet's brother, was there.
Right.
And not asleep like the Ramseys said he was. Because Patsy Ramsey wants everyone to think that she's screaming on the phone about her daughter, which she should be. If that's genuine, 100% scream. But she wanted everyone to know in all of her statements that Burke slept through the whole thing, and there's just no way that happened.
Because part of the other garbled audio that is remaining that Jim and Laura are trying to figure out, they say sounds like a little boy saying, "What did you find?"
Stop there. Can you spread that out? Oh my God. What did you find?
What did you find?
Right. What did you find? It sounds like a smaller voice, though. It doesn't sound like a booming adult.
Right. There were only 4 people in that house.
Right. One of them was dead.
And even if we didn't have this garbled audio, I would say there's no way this little kid is sleeping through the horror of this 911 call. There's no way.
No, and we get more into this in episode 2, but look, I'm not saying that Burke is involved. I don't want to be accused of saying that I think Burke did anything, but I just remember when I woke up and I couldn't find Daisy in the middle of the night, you wake up everybody in the house and find out if she's with them.
Right.
This whole story that they let Burke sleep is just it's just nonsense. It just would never have happened.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to get into this ransom note. Oh, sorry.
It's a letter.
This ransom letter, you guys. It's a goddamn ransom letter.
I'm obsessed with this.
I know.
For probably all the wrong reasons, but this is so damning to me.
I know.
I think it's ridiculous. ridiculous.
So you guys, we're going to do it. We're going to read the entire ransom letter.
I just want to say one thing before we dive in.
Yeah.
So the thing about this letter is that all our experts are like, everything about it, from the length to the words used, it's like all unprecedented in their 250 years of expertise.
Right.
Mostly because there's a ransom letter and a dead body in the house.
Right. That's the biggest thing. Like, everyone says to us over and over and over again.
It's unprecedented in the annals of criminal justice history, as far as I know, that both a ransom note requesting money and the body is left behind at the scene.
I've done 100 of these, guys. I've never seen a situation where there's a ransom note and the dead body in the same home. Like, you guys, I'm going to show my hand. Like, this ransom note is total bullshit.
It's bullshit. That doesn't mean we're not reading it in its entirety, though.
Right. All right, here we go. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter. Girl, can you I gotta catch my breath. This is so long.
Also, I can't imagine like what this exhausting exchange of money is going to be. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Okay. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. Oh my God, that is so chilling. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you to not provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as the police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies.
You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory, SBTC.
What on earth?
Look, if anyone's like new here, which is fine, again, welcome. But usually ransom notes are like, we have what you want, leave the money, no funny stuff, the end.
Exactly.
The amount of detail, they have better tracking than the U.S. Postal Service does. If you want to do it earlier, we can arrange an early delivery.
Right?
What are you talking about?
Like, there's so many things about this. Number one, again, I want to know like what this adventure of a money handoff is going to be that's so exhausting that JonBenet, who just learned that his daughter's being held for ransom, is expected to go get his full 8 hours? What?
And if you really want the money that badly, kidnappers, don't you want to make it easy for everybody to get that money so you can run?
Exactly. And then we learn that the police in their investigation, they find the legal pad, it's Patsy's. They find the Sharpie that it was written with. They ink match it. The handwriting matches Patsy. Oh, and they found practice drafts. Practice drafts.
Whoever wrote this managed to commit a murder, find the pad, find the pen, practiced a couple times because they didn't want to show bad penmanship or something, write it, and then put the pad and pen back to where they normally are kept.
It makes no sense at all to do that unless it's something other than what the note is making it appear to be.
So if Patsy Ramsey did this, and I don't know that she did, based on this one documentary, I'm leaning in that direction. She doesn't hang the phone up all the way when she does the fake 911 call. Then she leaves her practice ransom note drafts around.
She leaves them neatly in the desk that they were like, the pad was like put back.
Right.
It's all crazy. But there are a couple very specific things that should make everyone's little ears perk up.
Yeah.
Which is $118,000. Two things about that. One, he's a millionaire. Laura's like, why not go for the whole enchilada? Am I right? Like 118 grand. Like that's peanuts to this guy.
Yeah.
And also, what a weirdly specific number. Oh, also, that's basically like the Christmas bonus this guy was supposed to get, which to me, that's kind of like, that must have been a number that, let's just say Patsy wrote it, that she had in her head.
Right.
Like that sounds like a big number because it's weird. Like why write his bonus down? To me, that would be like, Mike, don't write down the number of your bonus. They're going to know.
Right. And then the linguist guy is able able to like match these words to movies.
On the second page, we have something borrowed from a cinematic version of a kidnapping of a young girl. The 1972 movie Dirty Harry. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. In the movie, instead of it actually being a dog breed is actually mentioned. Last page. Don't try to grow a brain, John. The movie was Speed.
So there's like a line from Dirty Harry. There's a line from Speed. It's just crazy.
And then we see like crime scene footage. Their home was like filled with framed movie posters. They were movie buffs.
Yeah, it's like everyone is so bad at this. And again, I'm not saying that I know that they did it, but it doesn't look good, Ramses.
So they want to find out who wrote it. And so based on the linguistic profile that they build, they call it maternal language. Didn't love that.
I know. I know.
Because at one point, it's like when they dive into the sentence where it's like, nobody really likes you. And they're like, does that not sound like a hysterical, emotional woman or what?
Do not particularly like you. Would a guy necessarily care if someone likes them or not? In this context, I find in the thousands of cases I've worked over the years, when someone puts a statement in like that, it turns out to be a female.
That's literally what they say. I was like, this guy's literally saying weak arms and small brains.
You know that Laura was like,
I know.
The only woman in the room, she's like, bigger fish to fry, bigger fish.
But they're saying, like, this was probably written by a woman. Like, they're saying this was Patsy Ramsey. Like, Patsy wrote this letter.
Right, because we learned educated journalist major, her pad that she put back in her desk. It doesn't look great. And practice letters. So now Laura, in her infinite wisdom, is like, you know what we should do? They really want the viewers to know.
Oh, God.
This took a long time to do.
So imagine you're in somebody's house. You're there to steal their kid. How much time it would actually have taken standing in the middle of these people's kitchen the day after Christmas to write this note?
Right, a 5-page letter and 2 practice versions of it?
Right.
So Laura's like, fellas, gather round. They're in the workroom at the design table, because now it's just Project Runway. And the timer, bing, on the bottom of the screen. The 5 of them are right. Well, Werner Spitz isn't there. Hell no. Or Dr. Lee, they have no time for this shit. They're like, call me when you got some science, girls. I'll see you later. So they're now all trying to write the letter to prove that it would have taken a long time to do in the house if you're the murderer with all the practice things.
It took 21 and a half minutes just to write this thing. If it were original text, it would have taken so much longer because somebody is thinking of what to write. But even if they did it this fast, that's 21 and a half minutes that they could have been caught.
It takes them all like 21 and a half minutes. Someone finishes first and is like very proud about that. I can't remember who it is. Right. The point is, this was clearly staged. Like, that's what they're trying to say. This is not a real ransom note because it's a ransom letter. Where's the no funny stuff? Where's the cut up magazine letters? What are you doing? What are you doing? Haven't you seen an episode of anything?
And so now we meet Ron Walker, and he was the only FBI agent to actually visit the crime scene that day.
Yeah, and he's here with us now.
Right.
And he walks us through the timeline, and he's the first person to be like, girl, can you believe after they called 911, they called and invited over the entire neighborhood?
I know. So the most important thing that this detective Ron is here to tell us is that, like...
So it was my belief at this juncture, the ransom note was a red herring. So it's even more important at that point for the detectives to maintain visual contact with the family. I wasn't so much concerned about Patsy because Patsy was in the solarium and she was surrounded by the family friends, and at this point Larry Mason and I start talking about, well, what are we going to do to try to make sure the detectives there maintain visual contact with the family.
On the day of, because I was there, girl, I know exactly what happened. We were trying to keep eyes on the Ramseys. We knew something was fishy. We wanted to be able to keep eyes on them because we're at the murder scene. We want to make sure they're not up to shenanigans.
And it was basically just to go back to Home Alone.
Yeah.
Remember when Joe Pesci is there to try to case the joint and everyone's running around and everyone has their own agenda they're trying to pack.
Right.
There are 15 people in the house. In my head, that's what the Ramseys' home was like the morning she called 911 because it's come on in, everybody. Right. And the cops are like, hi, just want to ask you a couple questions.
Right.
What's going on?
And so the FBI, Ron, is telling us at one point, John Ramsey just vanished.
About noon, Linda Arndt calls in to Mason and tells him that Ramsey has been out of pocket for about an hour and a half.
Says when he reappears, his demeanor has changed.
He's agitated.
He's agitated.
he was just gone. And then he comes back, and now we're like, oh, fuck. We need to, like, search this house, because who knows what this guy is up to.
What were you doing for the hour and a half he was gone?
Exactly. So then the cop goes up to him and says, all right, girl, we are going to literally search your house from top to bottom. So we're going to start in the attic, and we're going to search all the way down to the basement. So John's like, great.
When she tells John, we're going to search the house top and bottom, and we're going to start at the top, Ramsey is there with Fleet White. He grabs Fleet by the arm and makes a beeline for the basement door.
John grabs his friend Fleet White, and they head for the basement.
Just the whitest name. I mean, I know White is in it, but his name is Fleet. He actually does something kind of great eventually, but like, my point is like 4 hours after you call 911, why are they the first people to say, let's overturn every crevice, everything to look up and down in this house?
Right.
So he's like, oh shit, girl. So John grabs Fleet White and quote, makes a beeline to the basement. John opens the door and quote, finds JonBenet.
Right.
And Ron, our expert, is like, this is textbook, you guys.
Virtually every staged murder case that I have seen, the perpetrator manipulates the arrival of friends or other family members who are then put in a situation where they actually discover the body, or they are with the perpetrator as the body is discovered.
When murders are staged, or like when the finding of a body is staged, the perpetrator, as they say, 'cause I'm fancy now, will make sure there's a friend or witness there so that Fleet White cannot perjure himself on the stand and say, I was there when John found the body.
Exactly.
But it gets worse.
Right. So John fucking Ramsey finds his dead daughter. He scoops her up. So like disturbing the crime scene from the second he finds it. We learn now or later, like she had duct tape on her mouth. He takes the duct tape off. There's like rope that he messes with. He picks her up, brings her upstairs, like puts her down on the carpet.
And Ron White is like, he basically put her, you know when you like walk into someone's house and there's like a welcome mat inside of the door too?
Totally.
Where everyone is there and stepping on it and all the DNA in the world. Like he put her in a very, what they call a high traffic area. And every second of this thing is heartbreaking. But to me, it's like, you just put her back on a different floor. What?
And the implication is that it was intentional, that John was trying to put her down in an area that would track a lot of DNA and fibers from other people, and that would just like muddy the waters of this crime scene even more.
That's when it really first hit me about the nightmare that the forensic people were going to have.
So girl, CBS is building the Ramsey house. This blew my mind. In order to get these like Henry Lee and Werner Spitz, like these people they're probably paying zillions of dollars to actually get to like examine as close to the crime scene as they actually can get, they rebuilt the house.
Mm-hmm.
Every detail of this house, like we see the crime scene video and they reconstructed this house from the crime scene video and every fucking detail is perfect. It's unreal.
Talk about dotting your I's, crossing your T's. I mean, this is, because it's, I just want everyone to be totally like clear about it if you haven't watched it. It's not just like on a soundstage. I'm sure it's on a soundstage, but it's like built to scale.
Yes.
Down to like cobwebs. We'll get to that later. Down to like if a picture frame was a little askew, it's askew in this fake house. It's crazy.
But like this weird elephant painting that's like on the floor that you see in the crime scene video, they have it in the reconstruction of the house. It's insane.
Well, of course they do, as they should.
Right. So now like Ron, the FBI guy who was there that day, and maybe he took the video, I don't know. He's walking us through the crime scene and like one of the things we see now is this broken window and this blue suitcase in the basement. It's where we're eventually going to learn that the theory was that the intruder broke in.
Right. So now we get some more tidbits from Ron, the FBI guy who was on the scene.
Yeah.
And he tells us two very important things. One,
John Ramsey opens the door, says something about finding his daughter, and then turns the light on.
He says that John screamed out that he had found his daughter's body before he even turned the lights on in the basement.
Yeah, it's the wine cellar in the basement. So it's like the basement's basement. And we see it in the reconstruction. We're with Jim Clemente, and he's like...
From my perspective now, I can look in here and see objects.
Right.
But I don't know that I can necessarily identify objects.
Right.
I mean, this just looks like a jumble of cloth to me.
Right. And how would you know that that was actually your daughter wrapped up in there?
You can't see anything in here. Like, there's no light, there's no windows. Like, if you were to just walk in and scream, I found her, before you turn the lights on, the implication is that you could only do that if you already knew she was there.
And what kind of monster pushes their luck by walking into a basement without turning that light on that you can still see all the electrical pieces around it? Like, who's pressing their luck saying, I'll just go down in the dark.
Right.
It's fine. What they're saying is there's no way he could have seen that. There's no way. He was just basically like, hey, Fleet, you heard me say I found her, right? Great.
Exactly.
So then the other thing Ron says is like, actually, just a little offshoot of that, it was super clear from the beginning that the Ramseys were being treated with kid gloves because they were rich and white and powerful in the community.
Right.
From what I can see, the influence here really had a very significant impact as to why people were allowed to come and go from the house.
Going through the list of things that initially puzzled me, but then I started thinking, when you add them all together, I started thinking, well, there's something really bizarre and odd about all of this.
Right.
And then this is where we learned that as suspicious as this all fucking looks, the Ramseys are not questioned. Like, you know, Ron, the FBI guy, says, like, protocol is you separate them, you get their separate stories, and you get them on the record that day. They are not questioned for 4 fucking months, you guys.
So remember Fleet, their friend Fleet?
Yes. Fleet, who, like, was with John in the wine cellar when John, quote, found JonBenet's body.
Right. And for a time, Fleet and his wife Priscilla were, like, such close friends that they were called at 6 a.m. and just hightailed it over there. Like,
on the day of the murder, yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, they were friends until they weren't, because Fleet, God bless him, writes an open letter that's 14 pages long. These people do not know how to be concise. 14 pages. An open letter, like, to the press, telling John Ramsey to stop hiding behind his lawyer and cooperate with the police.
In a 14-page open letter, Fleet White criticized the Boulder District Attorney and took particular aim at the Ramseys. White says the investigation has failed because the Ramseys have refused to fully cooperate with investigators.
Like, this is what is so unbelievable. It would be like if I called you and said, come over, Daisy's dead. And then a minute later, you're in the Facebook group being like, Patrick is lying to you.
Yeah, well, girl, I would have made a podcast about it, put it in the regular feed, but, you know.
I'm just saying, like, this is very, very telling that their best friends are running to the press to try to get the Ramseys to stop hiding behind their lawyers.
And 14 pages worth of, and another thing. Again, you could say this in 4 sentences.
It's so crazy. And so now, of course, Laura and Clemente are trying to get Fleet White to talk on the record, and he doesn't want to. Like, I'm sure every single person involved in this fucking case has been burned, and, like, you know, Fleet taking this very seriously, just wanting justice for JonBenet, probably, like, doesn't know, what is this documentary, like, what are you talking about? You can come and talk to me, but I'm not getting on camera.
Right, which is, at least he's still talking. And I'm not sure if it's Laura or Clemente, but one of them says, look,
It's more important that we have it than we have it documented.
Agreed.
we'd rather have the information than the footage. So, like, we just want to talk to this guy.
Totally. So we're meeting the Ramseys' friends and coworkers or whatever. Girl, we meet Judith Phillips.
Yeah, she was a photographer. She was a friend of the family, but she also, all those glamour shots we know from the media, Judith took them.
Yes.
Which is kind of like, wow, like, oh, right. It's so crazy, like, how the media can fuck things up so bad, but, like, or just make things weird, where I'm like, oh, of course a human took those photos.
Right.
Like, of course somebody took them. And it was weird to hear that she did. Like, it was, like, kind of a weird disconnect that came together.
Well, you want to know another weird disconnect? So Judith and Patsy met in Atlanta, but they became really good friends in Boulder when they were on the same softball team. Girl, what's that softball team called?
Mom's Gone Bad. Judith hates it. Judith is like, looking back on it, bad look, huh?
In Boulder, we became even closer friends because we were all on the softball team together. Mom's Gone Bad, of all things. That's the name of our team.
So the thing that's happening, remember how Patsy and John haven't been interviewed by the cops?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have been interviewed by CNN. Like 4 days after the murder, they go on CNN, and we're going to get more into that later. But like one of the things that Patsy says,
there is a killer on the loose. I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you.
like, hold your babies tight. There's a murderer out there, like, basically coming for your kids. So Judith, at Patty's request, goes to the mayor and is like, they don't feel safe. They think there's a murderer on the loose.
So I went to the mayor's office and I said, Patsy wants protection. And she said, there's no murderer out there.
And the mayor's like, girl, there's not a murderer on the loose. Like, everyone knows who did this.
Right. And I think it's very odd that Patsy, I'm like, Patsy, who do you think you are? What do you think, you're in the mafia to, like, send Judith to do your bidding? If you're so powerful, like, I know they are rich and white and powerful in the sense where the cops are just like, whenever you want to be, like, questioned by us, that would be, like, so great. Just, like, let us know if you're free. Like, whenever you're free, like, we'll circle back. We can hop on a call. Like, what the fuck? But that, like, They don't have enough power to go to the mayor themselves because they knew the mayor would say that's bullshit. So they wanted to have a friend of theirs. It's like Fleet White all over again.
Totally. So you guys, Werner Spitz is here and it's his turn to talk, girl.
Spitzy.
So we learned that like the official cause of death.
Cause of death of this 6-year-old female is asphyxia by strangulation associated with cranial cerebral trauma.
Werner Spitz has had access to the autopsy, and that's like the official cause of death. But he's like, no, bitch, that's not how it happened.
Right. He's like, I've seen 60,000 cases. I don't know everything, but I know something about something.
So he said he didn't know what caused the death at first, but he knew that like her skull had been fractured and like a perfect little rectangle had been cut in her skull. And he's like,
I didn't know at the time what caused this.
Okay.
But then I looked at the photographs and saw a 3-mag flashlight sitting on the kitchen counter.
Right.
And I said, well, I have to check whether that may have been the cause.
And did you do experiments?
I did that, yeah.
And so what he says is, based on the records and everything he studied, JonBenet was not strangled to death.
Right.
There was a rope placed around her neck after she died. And then maybe they strangled her after she died to make it look like that was the case.
Right.
But he said, this is what we're saying, that they say very blunt things just because they're scientists. He said,
so they applied a mechanism of death that at face value, you'd think, oh, she was strangled. And then, of course, she has a blow to the head. So which is it? Well, it's very simple when I explain to you that, yes, she was strangled to make believe that was the cause of death. She already was brain dead.
Now, again, like the documentary takes this as gospel. Like it's as though like now we've decided that this is the cause of death. And we as the viewer don't really get much more information beyond this. But now it's like the assumption of the documentary that like that's what happened.
Right. And so Werner's like, it's the blow to the head that killed her. And Dr. Henry Lee like raises his hand slowly and is like, if I may.
I just want to play a devil advocate.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We should find tissue and blood on the flashlight. And also should have broken hairs. We should have trace evidence, blood, hair, tissue. That's why I suggest them to do some DNA, try to find tissue and blood. Apparently, they did not find anything.
I don't 100% agree. And I'm like, oh, and everyone, all the air is sucked out of the room. And everyone's like, see, this is why we weren't sure if they could be together in the same room. This is why we're living it.
So Clemente and Laura, they're like, tell me again, Spitz, how like using that flashlight and like hitting somebody over the head with it, how sure are you that it could cause that rectangular hole that we see in her skeleton?
And then he says something where I'm like, oh shit, what?
So would it take tremendous strength to do this?
Because this is a heavy object with 3 batteries in it. The skull of a 6-year-old, we call them eggshell skulls.
Got it.
But you don't need much force. I mean, I think
You
that's
don't
just...
need such huge amount of force. No, that is a mistake. Could be an adult, it could be a child that did it.
He's like, well, you know, it didn't have to be like that hard of a force. Like it could have been an adult. It could have been a child. I don't know, maybe someone of 9 years old by the name of Burke. And I'm like, Werner, oh my God.
But then they're like, you know what we should do actually to prove that it could be a 9-year-old boy? Let's bring in a 9-year-old boy, traumatize the living shit out of him. So they set up this thing where Laura says, and I quote,
So Dr. Spitz, we have a skull, but with pig skin over the top of it to act sort of like the scalp, to see what it looks like if somebody hits it with a flashlight.
Then they put a blonde wig on it, you guys. They bring in this boy and they hand him a flashlight and they're like, could you see if you could bash that skull in for us? Thanks.
They did this in casting JonBenet. Remember the little boys with the watermelon? That is like burned into my brain.
Oh my God, that's right. Well, this is even more vivid and vicious. Yeah. This kid takes the flashlight. He hits this head so fucking hard. And then Clemente comes over. He's ripping the wig off, ripping the pig skin off so we can see the perfect little rectangle that matches JonBenet's like skull x-ray or whatever. The whole thing is so graphic and disgusting. And I'm like, what was the conversation with this kid's agent when he booked this gig?
So the whole point is that Spitz's formal opinion is that the flashlight is the murder weapon and it's totally possible a kid did it. And I'm like, Spitzy girl, that's a heavy sentence you just said.
I know. And it's the thing that's infuriating about that is that like that could totally be right. It could totally be wrong. I don't know that we'll ever know.
Right. And it ends with, as Laura calls them, Fitz and Stan, which is totally a show I'd watch. It's our language and behavioral experts here, and they're watching. Remember how the cops were like, "Hey, girl, if you want to interview, that would be great," but it was totally fine. And so the Ramseys are like, "We're not going to talk to you, but we're going to go on CNN and cry our eyes out about how there's a serial killer around town."
Exactly.
So we are looking at this footage.
This is kind of crazy, I will say.
And we do meet this guy, Elliot, the reporter from Boulder, who has the nerve to look me right in the eye and tell me.
So there was no compelling reason why this should have become the big sensation that it was. But it was the week after Christmas, before New Year's. There's no news. It's a very quiet time for national news, and that was when the 24-hour news cycle was still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
That he can't understand why this was such a big case. He blames it on being a slow news week, and I'm like, sweetheart, it's not because she was like a gorgeous little girl and white and blonde and in the pageant system. You really are blaming it on a slow Newsweek girl? Wake up.
I know. But then they start to analyze this interview on CNN, and I gotta say, like, this linguistic stuff, I don't put a lot of weight behind it, but like, there are definitely some telling moments. Like, the interviewer says to Patsy Ramsey,
"Are you fully convinced that your daughter was kidnapped by some outsiders outside your family or circle of friends?"
She's shaking her head no, and then her husband says yes, and she starts shaking her head yes.
Yes. Now, two things about this. I don't necessarily buy the look at their behavior. You see how they cross their arms? I do that too. When I am agreeing with people because what you're saying is so horrible, I will shake my head and be like, oh God, that's so gross. You're absolutely right. And both you and Mike have said to me on several occasions, are you disagreeing with me? And I'm like, no. I'm shaking my head because I agree with you so much. So I do this all the time. So I think behavioral stuff is bullshit, but I don't know if they got me hook, line, and sinker or what. But there is something where you could tell that she's responding. Because usually I only stop shaking my head when you're like, girl, am I wrong? Did I get that fact wrong? I'm like, no, that fact is just so horrible that I'm shaking my head no, but I don't change my whole facial expression.
No, it's true. And the thing is, like, this interview on CNN is 4 days after the murder. Like, Patsy looks like she's taken a Xanax, which, girl, I don't blame you. Like, there are moments in this where they look really guilty and I'm mad at them, and then there's moments where they look like they're really suffering, like now, that I feel really sad for them. And, you know, it's all fucking terrible.
So it ends by us learning that on May 1st, this happened the day after Christmas, the year before. May 1st, the Ramseys finally agree to talk to the police. How nice they got to agree. So they agree to talk to the police, and then they do a press conference about it in their living room.
Right.
And Fitz and Stan, the new show I'm going to watch, which whenever you make it, anyone, I'm watching it. Fitz and Stan are like, I'm sorry, do these people want a medal for trying to finally help out the cops for what happened to their kid 6 months ago?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
And in this press conference, you know, John is the first to say, like,
to those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet. JonBenet and I had a very close relationship. I will miss her dearly for the rest of my life.
And then Patsy says the same thing.
I'm appalled that anyone would think that John or I would be involved in such a hideous, heinous crime. But let me assure you that I did not kill JonBenet.
The real ending are like Fitz and Stan being like, they sound really convincing when they say that. It's what they're not saying, because Fitz and Stan and all of our experts firmly believe that JonBenet was murdered in her own home by somebody who was in the home. So if it wasn't John and it wasn't Patsy, that only leaves one person, her brother Burke. And so that is what all of episode 2 is going to be about.
Which is a little tough when you accuse a 9-year-old kid of murder, no?
Yeah, and it's like, look, I'm certainly not saying he did it. I'm just saying, like, that's the thesis of this documentary. So you guys, episode 2 is available right now and at the $5 level, ad-free on Patreon. You don't have to wait. You guys, it gets really fucking crazy. We've got a lot to say about it, and you should go check it out.
Yeah, and Fitz and Stan make that show. Make the show.
You guys, don't forget to check us out. If you want more to laugh about right now, at the $5 level on Patreon, you get over 140 full bonus episodes to download and binge right this goddamn second.
I'm so glad we finally we're hovering over the real number, because we were saying over 100 for way too long. I'm glad we finally have a little bit more realistic of a number.
Yeah, you know you want to hear our take on Tiger King. We've already started. It is as bananas as you expected. It's also where we do our episode-by-episode stuff, so it's like Don't F with Cats, Laci Peterson, Menendez murders,
Lorena, OJ.
Then it's like the early stuff, like the Jinx, Making a Murderer,
Yeah.
the Staircase, Serial, all of it.
And then a bunch of like random fun stuff. You get after parties, which is us just like hanging out, telling stories, spilling tea, just saying.
Yes. Right now we're doing a quarantine check-in once a week. You can hear like how bored we are. I have a chipmunk if you want to know about it.
Yeah, nameless for now. I'll get back to you. Next quarantine check-in, I'll have it named. How about that?
Totally. We don't have what's coming up next, you guys, because next week is going to be part 2 of the case of JonBenet Ramsey. It's going to be in the regular feed with ads. Once again, you can get it right now ad-free at the $5 level on the Patreon. Girl, where can they find us?
They can find us at True Crime Obsessed Podcast on Instagram. They can find us at True Crime Obsess on Twitter, no ED. And TrueCrimeObsessed.com is where you get like all the fun stuff, all the episodes, calendar of what we're doing, promo codes, merch, all that good stuff.
All right, you guys, we love you. Stay tuned for the outtakes from this ridiculous episode, and then go listen to part 2 of this right now.
We love you. This is, I feel, ow, it hurts. It hurts. This
What a time.
sucks. Yeah,
I
it's just, it's JonBenet. God, someone's got to solve it one day. I know. Officially.
And maybe it'll be us.
Maybe.
All right, we love you. Bye.
Bye. He's been living the love of my life in his noise-canceling headphones because I'm either doing a live video or I'm recording or whatever. So when I was watching the case against JonBenet, the case of JonBenet. If you hear something weird, you're like, what does that sound? It's me just like shaking the back of my shirt because no matter where we record, it's just 100 degrees.
I know.
So if you're like, what is that? It's just me trying to fan myself a little bit. I got this high pony going on. I can't. Our favorite Tim Gunn quote wasn't make it work. It was, look, don't bore Nina. Because Nina Garcia was one of, look, whatever you do, don't bore Nina.
My other favorite thing that Nina did was went during the runway show every week. She would take her cards and put them over her eyes because the lights were too glaring.
She needed to get that detail.
God, I'm going to stumble over her name every time. I cannot make myself say JonBenet with a hard J.
Because it's been decades of everyone saying JonBenet.
I know, because that's the way it should be said.
It's not your fault, girl. It's not your fault. I'm so worked up about this. My Apple Watch just said I hit my calorie count, my calorie walking for the day. You guys, I've been sitting here.
That's amazing.
But I'm so worked up about this that I just got my little alert. Speaking of loving her, do you love Brian Scott?
Let's skip him. Like, I literally have Brian Scott, the gardener. He's hot.
If your little girl is in a pageant, like, I hope it's like one of the good ones. I don't even know what that means, but I don't like that. Don't sexualize them and make them older. Just let them be 6-year-olds. Thanks.